I've been trying to build my YouTube channel. It's been interesting. I'm learning a lot of things. I'm kind of learning as I go. I just started recording projects that I was working on and, posting them. Not really a big video editor. Learning to do that has been, a bit of a challenge. Just as far as time consuming, I don't have a lot of free time. I am also working a full-time job along with the sub repair thing. For example, I need to stop hitting the bench because I've noticed a lot of my videos, I tend to bump my workbench and it causes my camera to shake. And it also makes a lot of noise. I have a very full workbench going on, 3D printer, coil stuff. Anyway, that being said, thank you for checking out my video. This video. What I'm going to do here is I've been making a lot of pretty outrageous claims lately online about my ability to rebuild the Type R, specifically in under half an hour blindfolded. Now, I don't believe I can actually do that. That was an outrageous claim. However, I do intend to see how fast I can rebuild an Alpine Type R with parts, only parts. I don't have a drop-in. I got to make the drop-in. So I'm going to do a cone assembly and put it all back together. Type Rs are really, really easy to rebuild. They're the sub that I learned to rebuild subs on. And you can have great results. I've had some really great sounding Type Rs that have been completely gutted and rebuilt. So what we're going to do is we're going to set up the build on my workbench. I'm going to set up the camera. There will be some time-lapse stuff because obviously nobody wants to watch me spin a sub and put glue on it in real time. That's just boring. So yeah, anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set my camera up. I'm going to record a time and date so you can see when I started. And then when I finish the sub, we will clock out and see how long it takes me to assemble an Alpine Type R. It's a 12-inch dual 4-ohm. So let's get started. Here it is, dusty old Alpine Type R. It is the second generation of the first generation of the plastic dust cap, and I believe that's a fourth generation. I don't know exactly what the generations are. Anyway, it's the black cone. They were rated at 1,000 watts RMS. They are not. In fact, they have been subsequently no hitting the counter. Okay, they have been subsequently reevaluated as being 750 watts RMS. Here is the dual 4-ohm voice coil. I happen to know from calculations I did that this wire is 26 gauge magnet wire. So the same as, let's see, do I have a 26? This is the same wire. It's kind of small, but it won't take 1,000 watts RMS. That's not. Those are usually around 600 to 750 watt voice coils, are about 26 gauge. Anyway, that being said, our goal here is to assemble a subwoofer in as fast a time as possible without cutting any corners and doing a good job. So what we're going to do is take a recording of what time it is now from my other phone. So let's take a look here. It is 9:47 on Tuesday, March 2nd, 2021. This phone is completely dead. Anyway, let's Google time and date. Okay. 9:48 p.m. Whatever, you can read that, I'm sure. Let's get started. So what we need to do is set the voice coil height. The center of the winding needs to sit at the midpoint of the top plate. So the first thing I did was measure the top plate thickness. It was 9.4 millimeters. Then we get the winding height, which was 43.91 millimeters. Divide that by 2, mark the center on the voice coil, then add half the top plate thickness and set the rubber hose clamp at that height, so that once we drop the voice coil into the voice coil gap, it sits on the top plate with the center of the winding height at the center of the top plate. Then we fit the spider ring over top of it, or the spider over top of it. Make sure everything's sitting flat, and then glue it in place just to hold it in place. We don't want to compromise the pigtails or the tinsel leads. We need to be able to access them and glue them into place. Then, so what we do is we pull it off, glue it from the bottom to make sure it's locked in place. Then go ahead and solder all the tinsel leads to the pigtails around the perimeter of the spider inside diameter. And it's very, very important to check the ohms to make sure that everything connected properly when you're doing your soldering before you glue them in, because once they're glued, if you didn't solder them correctly, then there's a very high potential for failure, and then you have to pull everything apart and remove all the glue, and etc, etc, etc. So the next thing to do is put the cone on, but the cone won't quite fit over because it's a 2.5 and this is a 2.58 voice coil. So we need to take the Dremel bit and grind out the opening to fit around until it sits flat on the basket. And once we have it seated flat, we glue it into place with the same CA glue. And then once we have that glued in place, we pull it off and glue in between the spider and the cone so that everything's glued top and bottom. Then we go back and flood the top, so there's a significant amount of CA glue in between the cone and the voice coil former, so that nothing's going to be coming apart. Now what I'm doing is cleaning off all the rubber glue from the spider ring and off the basket so that it sits nice and flat, and then put the new glue on, screw it in place, which is, there's only 5 screws, but you have to pull the rubber surround out of the way while you're gluing those. And then once that's done, you put your E6000 on the underside of the surround, so it'll glue onto the basket nicely, and then clamp it all the way around. And you don't want to apply any pressure to it. You want to glue it exactly where it sits, because when you put the shims on and set everything centered and glued it in place, that's where you want it to be. So for the assembly portion, we are done. Everything's glued in place. We're curing. We're going to need to leave the clamps on for 24 hours. The travel is clear. I'm not worried about any coil rub or anything like that. I could have probably been a little bit more meticulous with it, but that'll do. I didn't really check what I had for dust caps, but I think that will maybe not work. It's pretty good, but it sits a little bit, the angle of the flange is a little bit off, but I guess that'll be fine. I don't have anything better. I guess this little guy is a bit better. That one, but it doesn't, it's a bit smaller than the nope, I'll put that on there. Yeah, it looks like that's going to be the best option I have right now. I don't think I have anything I can pull off. My buddy probably doesn't want me putting his sundown cap on there. I got these PSI ones over here. They're too big, I think. Yeah, much too big. It's blank. Blank would be fine. I like the high So obviously, in fast motion, it's hard to see. I ran into a couple of issues along the way. Obviously, I hadn't fitted the coil around the cone around the voice coil, so I had to resize that a little bit on the fly, which is not a big deal, but certainly could have sped things up a little bit having that done prior to doing the assembly. Again, I'm not overly concerned about rushing. We are just about at 1 hour. I'm not exactly watching the clock, but that's what the camera that is recording saw. I'll use something better to clean this, but this is a nice high roll SPL surround. It's rubber. It's not foam rubber. It's high density foam rubber. If it is foam rubber, it's very nice. This needs to be cleaned. I'm going to use this one. Lovely, lovely dust cap here. So what I'll do is I will put it along the high ridge here, and then as it settles, it'll settle towards where it's actually sitting on the cone itself, because it's not going to switch quite flat. But I mean, honestly, it's not going to affect the sub in any way. I mean, it's not like it's a 4,000 watt competition sub. I mean, it's going to be a very nice sub. I'm not, belittling this sub. It's lovely. It's actually one of the nicest Type R's I've ever done a complete replacement on. That being said, let's get this thing glued in. That way I can stop the clock, and aside from the glue curing aspects of this build, we will be done. Yeah, see how long it took me to do a Type R cone assembly. I'm interested. Again, like I say, things didn't exactly go smoothly, but actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to double beat it so that there's lots of glue settling into the seat. But we're going to do this as 2 separate clips so I can speed it up. Keeps telling me my password's wrong. Okay then, well, that being said, it is currently 10:49, March 2nd, 2021. I was hoping to use the Google date from Google, but my internet has decided to stop working on my phone. So I'm going to turn the video off. I'm going to turn around and smash this cell phone with a sledgehammer several times, and then possibly come back and do a conclusion for this video. I'm extremely frustrated. Now that the glue has had a chance to cure, it takes 24 hours, we will pull the weights off for one thing. Take the tape off of there, and remove kind of little bits of stuff that may have gotten in there. Alright, sitting around here. Keep everything very organized so I can find it in the future. Okay, so all of the glue is now nice and stuck, holding It takes 24 hours. So the next thing we're going to do is connect it to an amplifier and run a frequency sweep just to see any issues. I mean, there's no issues, but we're going to check anyway because I tested all of my subs. Let me put the trim ring back on. One of the things to notice about the Type R basket is there's two little notches. Right here is one. It's like a little cut in the surround ring, and if you rub your finger under here, that's where there is a depression, and in that depression, that's how you line up your surround gasket. There's a little notch there as well, so it's just easy way to know how to line it up when you're putting this back on. So not the best with it on the spinner. There we go. Put your gasket back on. A little bit dirty, and also probably not necessary to do, but at this point, I mean, it would be before I mounted it. Make sure that one lines up. If they don't line up, you're going to have a little high spot in your gasket. It's not going to seal properly, but it doesn't matter for testing anyway. The other thing about testing this is that we're going to want to lift it up, because if it's sitting directly on the surface, the pull vent will take a spinner out of here. This pull vent will be blocked. Just get it lifted up off of there. That, like that. Connect our wires from the amplifier. I'm only running this amplifier at 12 volts. This is a dual force. We're going to be running this guy at 2 ohms. But the power supply that I'm using to run the amp will only put out like 300 watts or something like that. I'm not going to be cranking it. It doesn't really matter, but give it a test. Just make sure everything's working properly. Okay, actually, you know what we're going to do first? Silly of me. Just double check the ohms, make sure everything's rolling out properly. It's really, really important that you check the ohms before you glue all of the... So I'm getting 4.0 the first one, 4.1, 4.0. And what else are we getting here? That's interesting. Getting 3.9. Close enough. Just jumped up to 4. That's great. So that's working properly. This is negative, positive. This one. This. Okay. Turn the amplifier on. Not sure how much I got the gain set to here. That's pretty good. It's definitely working, but it sounds like something's already... Oh, that's why. Okay. So let's start with Hertz. So there's the 8 Hertz test tone, probably shaking the camera pretty good. And then we're gonna do a sweep turn the volume down a bit for the suite because we don't want to get it too loud. It's 1,000 hertz. 400. 150. You know, all the stuff on my bench rattling, pretty nice. All the way down to 18. 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7. So that is a finished custom play par. That wraps up the video. After I went through the process of the rebuild, I could certainly have shaved off some time. The total that I got was 58 minutes to do the rebuild. This is not going to fit on here. 58 minutes. Obviously, I hadn't cleaned the basket, which would have probably made more sense to do during the breakdown process of the sub. Clean off the basket and clean off the seat for the spider and clean off the spider ring and all those things I think would have fallen under the breakdown portion of the build. That being said, 58 minutes isn't bad. I think I could probably get it down to 45 if I prepped a little bit better. But that being said, that is a complete Alpine tape bar. And let's take a quick look at it and see what it looks like here. Okay. Got the full tall roll rubber surround SPL, and it has a it's a high dome wide flange, but the flange doesn't sit right in the seat, so there is a small ridge around here that's not, I mean, it looks like it's not glued down, but right in at the low point it is very well seated, and there's definitely no air leaking or anything like that. But yeah, it is a lovely sub. So hopefully I can find a new home for it. Or put it in my car. Either way.